My memory isn't the best sometimes, but about a decade ago, I used to live in New York. I don't live there now, but New York is the place where I spent the other half of my life mainly. We lived in upstate in a city called Binghamton, I think, and it got very cold there in the winters with a lot of snow. And we got so much snow that we built igloos. We, as in my father, built igloos for us, the kids, because I was too young. I was around 9, like 5 to 9 throughout those years that we lived there. So I wasn't capable of building that. So we would build igloos and leave a hole open on the roof right in the middle and make a fire. And so with the hole in the top of the roof, it kept the igloo from melting more than it would have without it. And we drink hot cocoa inside this little igloo. And I don't know what we talked about, but I remember being there. And I remember being happy. I remember being excited about being in a snow fortress. Coolest thing ever. We had a trampoline in the backyard. I think we've always had a trampoline in the backyard wherever we've lived. And this ginormous swing. This swing was hung from or between two trees. Between them. So we had a rope that went from one tree to another tree about 40 feet up. 40 feet to my 9-year-old remembrance, maybe like 20 feet up, realistically. And then we hung a rope in the middle of that rope. So we had this ginormous, awesome swing right in the middle of the yard between these two trees. And there was a round wooden seat held up by a knot in the rope, and you'd sit on it and someone would push you back and forth, and I guess you could get your own momentum, but it was so much funner for someone to grab the bottom of the rope underneath the seat and just whip you around. We had a hammock, and I have fond memories of falling asleep in this hammock, but I also remember falling out of it a good many times. Quite a few, actually. I was probably just messing around, or maybe I fell out when I was sleeping, but going from utter ease and comfort to being on your face on the ground in the dirt so suddenly, it's not the best feeling in the world. It's quite contrasting experience from one moment to the next. And so despite that happening like a decade ago, like that's the stuff that stays in my mind. I don't really remember many conversations. I remember experiences. I remember swings. I remember lizards? No. Snakes. Little gardener snakes that we'd catch in our yard. Just tiny little things. And sometimes they'd bite us, but we weren't too intimidated by them. I'm totally scared of snakes now. But they weren't poisonous, and their teeth were tiny, and so it wasn't a big deal. So we caught those things all the time. There were crawdads in the streams in the woods behind our house. Tons of little crawdads. And we'd catch them, and we never ate them. I'd like to say we did and brag about that, but yeah, we'd just catch them and then let them go. Always keeping away from their pincers. And I remember the lake, the streams in that woods freezing over in winter. there would be this layer on top of ice, and the water would still run underneath it. And I can think back when I was tentatively, like, putting my weight on it, and I'd hear, in the silence of winter, everything's just so still, I'd hear that sound of the cracking of the ice. And sometimes I'd be a little more fierce with it and just, like, run my foot through the whole thing and probably get my boot a little wet. It was a blast. There were these checkered flags all throughout the woods behind our house that made me think that somehow, long ago, this place was a race course. For cars, I don't know, horses, but I just saw these little triangular flags all over the place. Maybe they were property signs, property boundaries or something. But I have many memories of imagining what those flags signified. I remember finding an old fire pit with somebody's belongings from a long time ago. Can't remember any of the belongings, but it was just a lot of old stuff. Just sitting in our backyard. There was this ginormous hill next to this little lake. And if it's a lake, it's pretty big, but it was a little lake in comparison to the bigger lakes out there. And we set up a zip line into the lake from a really high tree for a family reunion one year. And that was a blast. We didn't go swimming very often in that lake, but we always had fun when we did. I remember that hill next to the lake being covered in snow. Everything being white. And I remember the silence of winter. I loved that sound. I loved the calmness. I'm obsessed with it. Seeing snow, little snowflakes falling everywhere by the millions, constantly, every second, and not hearing a bit of it. It's like slow motion rain, watching the snowfall. Just a little colder. There was this ginormous hill, maybe 10 or 15 minutes away from our house. And it was perfect for sledding. We always got there after a lot of other people had sledded on it, so the snow was packed in real tight. It was almost ice. So you got some speed going down that thing. I remember sweating because of going up and down that thing, of climbing it over and over and over again. It was the funnest thing. Oh, I remember hot cocoa, that's for sure. Winter always comes with hot cocoa. And eggnog. It's, what is it, October? Yeah, mid-October. I went to a local store and I saw eggnog. And eggnog really is the best drink for my soul, not for my body, that I've ever had. Eggnog is divine. I love eggnog. I've made it, and it tastes amazing to make it yourself. I know that part of that is just the work I put into it, and I guess like the appreciation of that. But any form eggnog takes, as long as it's nogless, as long as it's non-alcoholic, is amazing. I love eggnog. I can drink it by the pint. I did drink it by the pint. I bought a pint the other day and I drank the whole thing before I got out of the store almost. I paid for it, too. gosh. Eggnog. I always wondered if there were raw eggs in it, and I don't think there is. I confirmed my thoughts on that when I made it for myself. I found a recipe online, and they explained that I needed to temper the eggs. And I believe that's when you cook the eggs in a already near boiling mixture. It's hot enough to cook it, or to get all the salmonella germs or bacteria out of it, but not hot enough to turn it into like scrambled eggs. It maintains its liquid form, which is good for eggnog because you don't want scrambled eggs in your eggnog. Who wants that? I've made it, I think, 3 times. The first time I made it, I think it was like 1 a.m. at a friend's house. I begged him, and he was so glad that we made it by the end. When he tasted that stuff, he's like, wow, that's good. There's another time that we ate, or made, we also ate them, of course, fried Oreos at his house. And we made a mistake. I have never dealt with boiling, grease? Not boiling grease, boiling frying oil? Maybe that's it. To get these fried Oreos fried, we had to dip them after dipping them in pancake mix. We dipped them in this boiling vat of oil. And it was hot. And I'd never had much experience with boiling oil. So once we were done with the oil, I threw it in the faucet counter dish thingy where you wash dishes. Not the dishwasher, but the bowl on top of the sink. It's a sink. That's what it's called. I threw the big pan of boiling oil in the sink and poured cold water in there. That is as close as I've come to a real life volcano. And doing that at 1 a.m. was not a good idea because the sound it made was also similar to that of a volcano. So with sleeping parents and siblings around and not sleeping any longer, we nearly blew up the kitchen. It was so terrifying. It was scary.